Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. Tonight we will be talking about the ongoing situation in Gaza. As nearly 400 days have passed since the escalation of Israel's aggression on Gaza, with of course the number of lives lost crossing over 40,000. 413 human rights organizations have and humanitarian organizations have written to United Nations General Assembly to of course take action against Israel's aggression on Gaza. When we talk about of course ongoing talks regarding ceasefire, what are developments on that, we will be talking about and exploring all this in today's program, and how this conflict is now spreading into the whole region. We will be talking about those dimensions as well with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken ramping up his diplomatic efforts regarding the ceasefire. What can we expect with these efforts? We will be talking about all these of course dimensions in today's program. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Mr. Nadir Turk, who is head of Mission Palestine Embassy. Welcome to the program.
Thank you
We're
very
also
much.
joined by Mr. Sheharyar, who is analyst. Welcome to the program. So Mr. Turk, let me start with a very basic question. With the latest situation, on ground situation in Gaza, of course unfortunately the number of deaths is increasing with each day. Can you tell us about the latest developments in the region?
First of all, thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity again to be your guest. It's always an honor for me. The latest, as you know, more killing, more injured people, more damaging for everywhere. Even right now, the safe zone, which was mentioned by the Israelis in Gaza, decreased to become about 10% right now. Between 10 to 11 is actually exact is 10.5%. Which and again there is no safe zone actually in Gaza, because they remember a few weeks before when they are trying to kill one of Palestinian fighters, they even attack the tents of the people who are looking for safe zone. So this is the situation. For ceasefire, we still having the same circle of propaganda that the Americans said that ceasefire it is soon, but we keep in mind that the Americans themselves use veto against ceasefire 3 times in Security Council. We keep in mind that they are said that we are few steps to reach to ceasefire, but we only have a small problem, which is, Palestinians are not there and they are not agree, and the Israelis are not agree. So who is going to make ceasefire? This is the question for the Americans. Third things, I think the ceasefire is only a game to buy more time for Israelis to continue what they are doing since more than 110 days. So the genocide is continued. Americans still continue that, and they are right now buying time to bring their aircraft carriers to the region, their warships there, to be prepared for what happened in the next step with the Iranian and other wars in the region.
Let me bring Sheharyar to the discussion. Sheharyar, what's your take on this regarding, of course we know this is around 10th visit of US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to the region, and of course now he is going to be continuing this ramping up of his of course diplomatic efforts, we can say. What are your expectations from this ceasefire efforts?
Well, Maryam, first of all, this is not the first ceasefire attempt or like the truce attempt that has been, undertaken by all parties. All previous 3 to 4 deals were sabotaged by the Netanyahu government. Every time the deal was reached, and this is not the first time Antony Blinken is coming up with a deal that has apparently been accepted by the Israeli side. Previously, it has been done as well. And every time Netanyahu comes up with like some new conditionalities that he needs to add, and then they carry out extra judicial killings, and then they carry out bombings, they kill more civilians, they attack other countries like Lebanon, they do illegal operations. and they basically attack civilian infrastructure, then they attack UN-backed agencies, hospitals, schools, and then they expect the ceasefire deal to be respected by all sides. So I don't understand, and I personally am not very confident that this new ceasefire deal, which is actually the continuation of the deal that was originally proposed on 31st of May, which was again sabotaged
Biden,
by
of
the
course, yeah.
Netanyahu government. This time around there are
but
some
a lot of changes
bridging.
has been made in the original, of course, proposal that was presented by Biden.
In one line, I'll tell you what the hostilities right now are when it comes to the ceasefire deal. The Israeli side is adamant and they're very stubborn that they will not end the military campaign unless or until Hamas is completely destroyed. Now a lot of people, even in the Israeli government, have basically said that this is not possible. You know, Hamas cannot be totally, completely obliterated or destroyed. And on the other side, Hamas is basically saying that unless or until there is complete and permanent ceasefire, they will not accept any demands that are coming from the Netanyahu government.
Right, right. And Mr. Turk, when we talk about, of course, the stance of freedom fighters, and how do you view the stance, and especially the recent, of course, letter that was sent by around 413 humanitarian organizations to United Nations General Assembly. Now, 10 months into the war, do you think that this is going to be having an impact on international human rights organizations or UN General Assembly?
Actually, the problem is not with humanitarian institute and organizations. The problem actually with the Americans and the Israelis themselves. The problem is with the international society, which is, I speak about governmental side of international society, which are not ready to follow the human rights principles and following the international law. As long as the Americans giving cover and defend the Israelis in this way, in their crimes, the genocide, we will not be see fair or justice on the ground. For not only in Gaza, even we see right now in West Bank, they're doing similar things in small cases or small way in West Bank, similar what they are doing in Gaza. They attack Jenin, they attack many of other Palestinian towns, and do exact what they are doing in Gaza, but in small samples, not in the majors of they are doing in Gaza. So the problem again and again is not with the international organizations, not with the humanitarian organization. The problem is with the Americans who are using double standards when they are dealing with the same cases. Again and again, we always compare between two cases. Right now, it is on the international between Ukraine and between Palestine. What happened in Palestine? When something happened in Ukraine, directly the international law is there. The power to support, full support for Ukrainian people is there. International law, human rights, everything is there to support the rights of the Ukrainian. And the other side, when the Israelis, everything becomes shut down and everything become right of defense for they have the right to defend themselves against the Palestinian. And this is always take us for the main issue, the double standards.
Right.
To end all this situation, we need to end double standards.
Right, very, very important point raised by you, Mr. Turk, and let me take Sheharyar's viewpoint on this. Sheharyar, what's your take on this regarding, of course, US's unwavering support for the Israel at the same time negotiating these ceasefire efforts? How do you think that this has changed America's global standing, especially in the global south?
So Maryam, there is a lot of difference I feel in rhetoric and the actions on ground. The rhetoric is very different. The actions on ground are extremely, I would say, contrary to what the leadership and the Democratic Party is basically saying. Now, yesterday the Democratic National Convention started off in Chicago, and over 1,000 people came and they basically lodged a protest in America's involvement in the current war in Gaza. The Biden administration is feeling a lot of heat, and they are also understanding that they would lose the Muslim voters. They will also lose the support of the American Arab voters as well, of Arab background.
And there is a lot of rift within the Democratic Party as well because of the Palestine issue.
Definitely, and the Democratic Party is like already feeling the heat, and this might even lead to them losing their states that are historically known as swing states, and they swing between the Democrats and the Republicans. And this time around, I don't think they would be getting the support given the role that they have played, which has been very controversial, I would say, in handling this situation. Other than that, obviously throughout the world as well, the whole idea of a global rules-based order that we were taught in the last like 15-20 years, and the double standards that were blatantly applied, especially in this case, has been a litmus test in how the international geopolitical environment is shifting and changing. And a lot of countries, I'm not talking about Muslim or like Arab countries or Middle Eastern countries, I'm talking about a lot of like countries from Southeast Asia, a lot of like countries from Eastern Europe, and a lot of European countries, I would say, are now basically discussing the role of the veto in the United Nations and the role that United Nations was originally supposed to uphold, and whether it has basically successfully done that or not. Now a lot of questions
it
are
raises
being
a lot of questions on
raised.
international rule-based orders as well. But coming back to the situation on ground, of course, with continuation of Israel's airstrikes on Gaza, Human Rights Watch and other organizations have amounted these as, of course, war crimes. Do you see any repercussions for Israel in the coming days?
Hopefully, yes. But as long as we don't have a strong lobbying against the Israelis and the support of Israelis, the international community, we will not go to any results. Human Rights Watch, even they mentioned a few years before with Amnesty International that Israelis is apartheid regime. With that, we still find the superpower countries still supporting the Israelis. So we will not reach to any side or good effort of that as long as we don't find a strong lobbying against the Israelis, similar to the lobbying was against the apartheid system in South Africa. To reach that, we need to have a stronger work, hard work together, not as Muslim Ummah, not as Arab countries, but as a humanity as all. Because what is happening right now with the ground, it is not only against the Palestinian, it is even against the humanity principle itself. So, one thing, my brother here mentioned something about the Americans' elections. I like to give on the table, the statement was done by Mr. Trump. Okay, if the Democratic lose, for the Republican going to be win. So Mr. Trump, last week he mentioned very important statement. What he is when looking to the map, he saw that Israel it is very small, and he thinking how he going to increase it. So which mean that the conflict going to be increase, not decrease.
But at the same time, Mr. Turk, we are, of course, witnessing global outcry regarding these crimes that Israel is committing in Gaza. So, do you think in coming days, of course, we have seen over the past few months how Europe's stance has shifted. So, do you think these ceasefire efforts are going to be fruitful in coming days?
I'm not optimistic actually about that issue, because until now the main major parties, the player on the ground, the Israelis and the Palestinians, speaking Palestinian fighters on the ground, both of them refusing what happened in the ceasefire, because Israelis change the principles of ceasefire by putting on the table that they like first to release the prisoners, there is a prisoner between the Palestinian fighters' hands. After that, they have the right to continue the war against Gaza and against the Palestinian fighters on the ground. So what that means, that is only going to be in the benefit of Israelis, not in benefit of Palestinians, or not in benefit of ceasefire. It is going to be temporarily ceasefire, but ceasefire forever or for a long time. So according to that, the Americans are buying time again and again for the Israelis to continue what they do and to reach the result what they want by releasing the prisoners and to continue the genocide again. And bringing again their army, their power, their aircraft carriers or their worshipper in the area to be prepared for what's coming next. If the Iranian taking any steps, they're going to be ready. If Lebanese are taking any step or Yemen taking any steps against the Israelis, they're going to be very well prepared to support and defend Israelis. And I hope so. They are not thinking to increase the border with the Israelis.
Right. And Sheharyar, what's your take on this? Like, how significant is this threat of an all-region conflict if the situation continues in Gaza?
Well, obviously, if Israel is not stopped and if it continues on doing illegal strikes across the border, then obviously there are chances, and I think there are like very high chances that it could engulf the whole region into a conflict that would not be in control of any stakeholders that's like involved.
Right.
Even right now.
And what role can powers like regional powers like Egypt and Qatar can play in this regard, because they are also already mediators in this conflict, but since past of course 10 months we have been witnessing how this is escalating each day.
So Maryam, unfortunately the tragedy of this whole situation is that right now I don't think there's any stakeholders, regional or global, and by global I mean obviously the US backed Western stakeholders that have like any credibility, especially in this whole conflict. Now a lot of like stakeholders that have been involved in negotiations, I would say Qatar, I would like say Egypt, and like a lot of like European countries as well, they basically see that the whole role of the US has been very biased in favor of Israel. On one side there is rhetoric that human rights should be respected, civilian lives should be respected, there shouldn't be any bombings of like hospitals, schools, and but on ground the US administration is still supplying Israel with a lot of weapons, like around $20 billion of weapons were just approved last week. So at the one time the key mediation or the key mediatory role is with the US, and when we see the situation on ground, they are like openly backing Israel's aggression on ground. So out of all of these stakeholders that are involved.
Right, but at the same time, of course, we have been witnessing these attempts at, of course, ceasefire efforts. How do you view those efforts? Like if we see the recent statement by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he said this may be the last attempt after he met with Netanyahu regarding, of course, peace in the region. So how do you view this, and also how this is going to, if these ceasefire efforts fail, how what it means for US foreign policy in the Middle East?
One very important member from the Qatari side recently gave an interview or statement, and they basically said that we had already agreed to a ceasefire agreement in July.
Yes.
And it was bombed again by Netanyahu.
Of course.
And they basically say we do not have any trust right now with the Netanyahu government that even if a ceasefire deal is reached, that those terms and conditions would be respected by the Israeli side. Now this is the level of trust now when it comes to any discussions that are pointing towards a permanent ceasefire. I personally don't think that it goes into the favor of the Netanyahu administration to go for a permanent ceasefire. And
even the opposition in Israel is accusing Netanyahu of course, using delaying tactics regarding these peace efforts. So Maryam, but what it means if these recent, of course, ceasefire efforts are failed, what it means for US foreign policy in the region?
The US foreign policy obviously will be suffering a lot, and then there will be a huge, I would say a mess of gigantic proportions that would be waiting for the next administration. If it's Biden administration, if it's Trump administration, the situation will not be ideal, I would say. And coming back to the previous point as well, you know, we kind of like keep on mentioning that there are like certain movements going on in Israel, and they're like asking for a ceasefire as well. They're asking for the release of hostages, and they're pressuring Netanyahu to accept that deal. I would now want to oppose that framework as well, because a recent poll that was conducted in Israel basically said that like a lot of like people in Israel, they are supporting whatever is like happening. The whole Israeli society has now moved to the fringe, to the right wing, and they are very conservative when it comes to the whole issue of Palestine. And we have been observing that a lot of like Israeli right-wing conservative citizens have been blocking UN's trucks from even like taking aid across the border to Gaza. They have been stopping ambulances going from one side to another to help the injured women, kids, men. So who's like doing that? The Israeli military is basically taking these civilians, and they're giving them times and schedules of the trucks that are taking all of these humanitarian aid items, and those civilians are going and like stopping the trucks. So I don't like understand. I think the whole Israeli society right now is going in a direction that is not good for the whole region.
Right,
and we're not just talking about the Netanyahu government. This is like now spillover, and this spillover is there because there was no accountability of the way Israel is dealing with the situation.
What's your take on this when we talk about evolving stance of different nations regarding this ongoing Israel's aggression on Gaza, especially when we talk about Europe? We have witnessed that its stance, and many of the member countries, its stance have changed over the past few months. So do you think that this evolving stance on this conflict is going to be fruitful in some way in the coming, of course, ceasefire efforts or for peace in the region?
Separate of ceasefire, actually this is a dynamic of democracy. When the majority of the people of the European countries are in street protesting in favor of Palestine, and they see the election in UK, it is bringing new government. It was not anyone thinking they will win this election and coming to be in power. And directly they're taking very wise steps by taking steps not against Israelis, but freezing their full support for the Israelis. First, there was against the decision from ICC and ICG to going for arresting Netanyahu and the leader of his army. Later on, they said we are not involved in that issue anymore, and they're right now thinking to freezing supplying weapons for the Israelis, and this is a huge and important step taken by the new government of UK, and we are waiting for other European governments, especially German, still not taking any steps in this side, when the German people themselves are protesting in favor of Palestine, but the government still blindly support
and Germany is one of the biggest suppliers of arms.
Yes, it is one of the biggest after, this
Israel.
is the second actually after the United States of America. But for ceasefire again, it is only a game for giving more and more time for Netanyahu and his government. Ben Gvir and Smotrich clearly go in clear statement that if they are going, the Netanyahu going for ceasefire, directly they will break the government, even if the parliament is in a holiday. So as long as Netanyahu feels that his chair as a prime minister is, shaking, and he is not sure he will continue, he will not go for ceasefire. He will change the rule of the game until he be sure that he will, if he go for the election, he will get the majority without Ben Gvir and Smotrich. But this is far away to be happened.
Right. And we have been discussing Netanyahu's stance and how he has been a major hurdle in, of course, going towards peace efforts in the conflict. But at the same time, Sheharyar, like you and Mr. Turk also alluded to, divergent positions of US and Europe in this conflict. So how do you think these diverging, of course, views on the conflict mean what it means for transatlantic, of course, relations, and also how it has affected these, of course, regional powers' efforts regarding addressing the conflict?
So, Maryam, Europe, I would say, is a very precarious position when it comes to the whole, NATO alliance and what they are basically facing in terms of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Now, at one side, they have to uphold, and the whole case that Europe has built is circling around the whole respect for human rights and territorial sovereignty, respect for international law. And at the same time, they are basically saying that this whole live TV telecasted genocide that's been taking place in the Middle East, and they are basically now torn between two sides. On one side, they are basically looking for support from the US in countering Russia, which has invaded Ukraine, and at the same time, they also have to support the US stance of Israel in the Middle East. And that is like putting them at a very precarious situation, because they also have like a huge Muslim population and a lot of like progressive populations that are against this war as well, and they are also feeling the heat from the grassroots, from people who are protesting and like calling out their governments on the dual standards that are being applied in both sides of the conflict. And this is like now a lot of like government officials. Very recently, a very senior UK diplomat also resigned, and he basically said that now it's like unconscionable that I continue with this role, given that my government is continuously funding and supporting and supplying arms.
Yes.
And at the same time, a lot of opposition leaders now, Jeremy Corbyn especially, is now openly saying that now, since they're like also international criminal courts and international court of justice, they've also like given and alluded to the fact that this war is now complete genocide. Then why is like his country, which is the UK, and the rest of the countries still supporting or looking the other way when it comes to Israel's continuous barbarianism in the region? Right. And a lot of like politicians now are taking, and now a lot of like senior diplomats from the United Nations, a lot of the Prime Minister of Slovenia, they're all like now openly speaking against whatever is like going on. Right. And I see a lot of like changes.
So, Mr. Turk, you're not very optimistic regarding the ongoing ceasefire efforts. Given the missed opportunities in the past regarding a peaceful resolution of the conflict, what needs to change in these ceasefire efforts?
First of all, we need to give optimistic hope for the Palestinian people that the problem it is not only ceasefire, but to open opportunity for peace and stability, okay, for the future, for the Palestinian and for the region. By end the occupation, by giving opportunity for establishing a Palestinian state, independent state with Jerusalem as its capital, by facilitating the right of return of Palestinians. Or we will keep going on circle of violence to other circle of violence, because the root of the conflict need to be end. As long as we are speaking about only the cover of the conflict without going to the root of the conflict, nothing going to be happened on the ground. So this is what we are waiting for to see on the ground. And actually, I'm optimistic actually on one thing, that after the speech of His Excellency, the President of Palestine, His Excellency Mahmoud Abbas in Turkish Parliament, he was, I shared, I think before, highlight about the main points in the speech, that he mentioned very important points in that issue. That first, Palestinian people are united, okay? So, and we are, respect our people in Gaza and their settle and their battle for freedom and independence and to stay on their own homeland without immigrate outside of Gaza. Second, that he is highlight that the only thing can make the Palestinians power to continue their struggle for freedom and independence is to be united, all the political group of Palestine, and this what has happened in China a few weeks before that speech. Third things he mentioned, very important point, that the sickness is United States of America, and the United States of America is the sickness, which means it is a creator of trouble, and which will never reach any, solution of that. And the importance of that his speech was mentioned after his visit to Russia, which means that the player on the ground going to be changed. We will see more important rules by Russians, Chinese,
Right.
and other Muslim Ummah main countries, but not the Americans. Because we are not, as the Palestinian leadership, Palestinian people, and I think all the region later going to enjoying that club, not trusting the Americans anymore, because
Right,
actually
right.
they are
Very-
blindly supportive of the Israelis, not supporting international law, not supporting human
Right,
rights.
very important point, and my next question is regarding that to Sheharyar. Sheharyar, the of course concept of multipolar world is gaining transaction every day. So how do you think this ongoing Israel's aggression on Gaza is going to be playing a role in of course emerging new global powers or new power dynamics in the world?
So Maryam, the current global order is already in question, and I alluded to it earlier that a lot of like international leaders, a lot of international countries, international economic powers as well, and now questioning the whole role of the UN and the global order, led by the US, and whether it's equipped to handle the current geopolitical dynamics or shifts. I would basically say now with the whole rise of China. The whole entry of countries that are economically becoming very strong, like Brazil, you look at Russia as well, which is an economic and military power. Then you can also see the economic
and how might
performance.
Gaza conflict influence these, of course, emerging powers or a new power dynamics in the world?
So Maryam, when you basically see that the current global order, which generally has in the last like 40 to 50 years been very unipolar. A lot of like rising powers are now questioning whether this unipolar world has basically satisfied or whether it is like one power's agenda that is being thrust upon the rest of the world, in which human rights are, and the global order is very selectively applied. International law is applied on certain countries, certain situations, certain geopolitical events, and not on the others. And this like dual standard that has been there between the global north and the global south, the economic distribution, the distribution and the devastation caused by climate change, and a lot of these effects, the global south has been at the receiving end. And a lot of these countries that are now breaking the shackles of the economic depravity that they have suffered in the last 50 to 60 years. You see the rise of China, you see the rise of Brazil, you see the rise of Southeast Asia. A lot of these countries now are economically very strong and technologically very strong as well. And now they are basically asking for a seat at the table. And a lot of these countries are now questioning the whole idea of the veto that is there in the UN General Security Council. And we have like seen that in a lot of instances, certain superpowers basically use their veto power to basically, influence global
right,
foreign
they had
policy.
their independent
And that is
stance,
now being
of course.
questioned.
Of course. So moving back to the situation on ground in Gaza regarding the recent, of course, polio threats, and UN Secretary General has also called for a polio pause in the context of these emerging cases. So can you elaborate on the health sector situation in Gaza, especially these emerging situation of polio?
The health sector is almost destroyed. Most of we have before 36 hospitals. We have other small, health centers. Most of it was destroyed and out of service. So health sector is out of the question. We lost more than 500 workers, doctors, nurses, and ambulance driver and ambulance staff during this criminal attack over Gaza. So for health sector, it is completely don't have any ability to give service that is needed for the injured people or even for the sick people. There is no medicine, there is no equipment, they don't have the ability to give a good treatment what is needed for the people there. But actually I like to go back for your question before to my brother. Many of the Western people, Americans even, said that Gaza free us before it is get its own freedom. So the going to be, I think, the coming days, coming years will have huge and strong changes on the ground. The
It is going to be influencing the power dynamics.
Yes, and I think once before I told you that from rubble of Gaza we will rebuild the freedom and the independence of all the world. So maybe that going to give the ability for freedom and independence for Palestine, but before we need to free the world from the control of Zionist capitalism, colonialism, and first of all, free the world from the control of the United States of America as a government, not a people. As a people, we share with them our love, our respect, but as a leaders, as the Congress members who are controlled by Zionists and the Israelis lobby there, they are completely different. The story is completely different, and the view is completely different. So there's a start to free the world, and we will continue until the world gets his own liberty to raise the voice of principle of human rights, international law, international resolution, and this is going to lead us to reform the United Nations to be more just, more active, and more flexible when it is dealing and fixing and resolve the conflict in the world.
Right. So very important that Gaza conflict is definitely playing to be a defining role when we talk about the rule-based order and changing the power dynamics on the global stage. But coming back to the situation on ground, Mr. Turk, when we talk about the aid workers, of course, UNRWA has also reported that recently 207 workers have been killed. What needs to be done to protect those workers who are actually out there helping innocent Palestinians, saving their lives, and what needs to be done to protect those?
We need to activate the orders of IIC, ICC, court, and ICG by sending some Israeli leaders to the court to be punished for their crimes on the ground. This is first. Second, we need to freeze the supplying weapons for the Israelis and making strong lobbying against the countries who are supplying weapons for the Israelis, because it is not only killing children, women, innocent people, it is even killed international workers, international, humanitarian who are providing and bring humanitarian aid for the Gaza people. So when Israel is punished, the support of Israel is punished and feels that they are face the reflex of their criminal action against the Palestinians and against international organization, then we can see some changes on the ground. Then the Israelis going to be worried about their actions, and they're going to start following the international law. Step by step, the change will begin.
Right. And lastly, very briefly, tell us that looking forward, what are some of the realistic scenarios for a peaceful resolution of the conflict?
As I mentioned before, only by follow the international, we have more than 800 resolutions from United Nations. Okay, it needs to be activated and be shown on the ground. We have speaking about two-state solution. 181 resolution give a birth certificate for two states on the land of Palestine, Israelis and Palestinian. We see Israelis and their borders increase from 56% to 78%, and the international society accept that and didn't try to change it. And right now Israelis try to control 100% of the land of Palestine and even increase their borders according to Mr. Trump's statement. So what we need to see, establishing of Palestinian independent state with Jerusalem as capital, facilitate the right of return Palestinian people, refugees to their own homeland, and punish Israelis for their crimes, their genocide, their apartheid system, and end the occupation, end the Israeli settlements on the ground, to give hope that international law is still active and still have the power to solve any conflict in the world, or we will face more and more conflict, more than violence around the world, everywhere in the world, and then we're going to be genocide not only in Gaza, we're going to be everywhere.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Nadir Turk, for joining us in today's
Thank you
program.
very much,
thank you very much, Mr. Sheharyar Khan, for joining us in today's program. As we wrap up today's discussion regarding the ongoing conflict in Gaza, it is clear from today's discussion that this conflict is far from over and more needs to be done by the world to save the region. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.